Hey folks, Seth here. As we watch cities burn, statues being torn down, and calls to defund the police, if you haven't already, it may be time to think about personal protection. Guns Etc. has 10,200 square feet of guns, ammo, safes, and a staff that will work with you to find the best firearm for your situation. So stop by their huge store in Mesa or click on gunsetc.com and have access to over $400 million in firearms and accessories. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back and happy July 10th, 2020. As we've been discussing, and as many of you have equally intoned, we face a dramatic assault from the left in the Democratic Party. Nancy Pelosi, directly asked to denounce rioters destroying statues, said people will do what people will do. Joe Biden not only tweeted on Sunday that his intent was to transform America, his words, has not only refused to distance himself from the radicalism of Bernie Sanders or Ilhan Omar, who claims she wants to tear down, her words, from not just criminal justice, but also housing, education, healthcare, employment, and the air we breathe. That's what Ilhan Omar said she wanted to tear down the institutions about. But Joe Biden has actually put these people into his campaign, in his fold, embraced and adopted them. Did you know that Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders created a joint task force to adopt public policy for the rest of the campaign? They did, 2 months ago. Do you know who heads Biden's committee on climate change? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I had a caller yesterday say we may be able to point to the leadership of the Democratic Party as having moved leftward, but that's not the majority of the rank-and-file Democrats, he said, or at least not the ones he knew. Whether that is true or not is actually not relevant. If rank-and-file Democrats vote to install the left, what difference does it make? And that is where they will and who they will vote for. I'm not actually sure the rank-and-file, to the degree they are liberals and not leftists, understand the leadership of their party. I do know they will vote for it, unless otherwise peeled off or brought over to our side. But if you want to get a little insight of what the left believes, and if you want to get a little insight of what the left believes the the Democratic Party is adopting, just look to New York City and Bill de Blasio, banning all outdoor activity as he did again this week, with the exception of BLM protests. He told Wolf Blitzer on CNN exactly that this week. And of course, sans masque, he helped paint a huge BLM statement, a mural, on Fifth Avenue in New York. And I mean huge. Look at it online. It appears to take up a whole city block or more. Do you know what BLM stands for? Don Lemon will tell you it is to protest police brutality. Someone didn't tell the BLM movement that, however. As Fred Lukács points out, the group's co-founders are Patrice Kahn-Coolers, Opal Tometi, and Alicia Garza. Quote, "The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame," Kahn-Coolers has stated. She continued, "Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists." Close quote. Marxists. Opal Tometi, the third one, visited Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro that year and proclaimed, quote, "In these last 17 years, we have witnessed the Bolivarian Revolution, championed participatory democracy here, and seen it being constructed as a fair, transparent election system recognized as among the best in the world." Close quote. Best in the world. As Andrew Olivastro notes, visit the Black Lives Matter website. And the first frame you get is a large crowd with fists raised and the slogan, "Now we transform." Read the list of demands, and you get a sense of how deep a transformation it is that they seek. One proclaims, quote, "We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another." Close quote. A partner organization, the Movement for Black Lives, or M4BL, calls for abolishing all police and all prisons. It also calls for a progressive restructuring of tax codes at the local, state, and federal levels to ensure a radical and sustainable redistribution of wealth. Another M4BL demand is, quote, "the retroactive decriminalization, immediate release, and record expungements of all drug-related offenses and prostitution, and reparations for the devastating impact of the war on drugs and criminalization of prostitution, close quote. There's a whole host of other things in their list, too, including the eradication of private education. There's a lot to say about all of this, but this is the movement and organization major corporations are donating major dollars to. This is the movement and organization the Democratic Party is kowtowing to. This is not the only set of precincts where this exists. As Jarrett Stepman reminds, the New York Times recently ran an editorial headlined, "Happy birthday, Karl Marx. You were right." Surprised? Shouldn't be. In 2017, the New York Times dedicated an entire section of its website to the 100-year anniversary of the Communist Revolution in Russia. It featured an assortment of absurd pieces running the gamut of declaring Lenin a hero, the environmentalist movement, to claiming that women had better sex lives under socialism. Truly. But of course, at the New York Times, where Tom Cotton will submit an op-ed, the staff threatens resignation, and indeed editors were fired for running the Tom Cotton op-ed. Karl Marx, happy birthday. Lenin, celebrated. Tom Cotton, can't have. So pardon me for not taking seriously these soi-disant Republican organizations claiming to endorse Joe Biden, including a group of alumni from the George W. Bush administration. I'll take the language of George P. Bush, son of Jeb Bush, where he said, "This is an election between Donald Trump and socialism." It isn't a hard choice. But that aside for just a moment, can we go back to the idiocy of the BLM movement on its very first premise? To quote again, "We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement." First of all, I don't know where it's prescribed or a requirement. In fact, I worry a lot more about what shall be prescribed and required by the BLM movement if and when it takes more and more power. But can anything be more harmful to Black Americans than further disrupting the family? According to the last census report, 57.6% of Black children, 31.2% of Hispanic children, and 20.7% of white children are living absent their biological fathers. I've seen numbers much higher in most social research. It was just under 25% for Black Americans when Daniel Moynihan wrote his now famous report in 1965. Let me quote from Isabel Sawhill of the Brookings Institution, if I might. Brookings being a left-of-center think tank, the equivalent of the Heritage Foundation on the left, just so I cannot be accused of sifting the message through a right-wing or conservative set of talking points. And you tell me if the very first and most blaring thing, never mind the other nonsense like getting rid of private education, the very first thing the BLM movement stands for has any relationship at all with helping Black life. Here's Isabel Sawhill. There's a wealth of research that strongly suggests marriage is good for children. Those who live with their biological parents do better in school and are less likely to get pregnant or arrested. They have lower rates of suicide, achieve higher levels of education, and earn more as adults. Meanwhile, children who spend time in single-parent families are more likely to misbehave, get sick, drop out of high school, and be unemployed. Children raised by single mothers are more likely to fare worse on a number of dimensions, including their school achievement, their social and emotional development, their health, and their success in the labor market. They are at greater risk of parental abuse and neglect, especially from live-in boyfriends, more likely to become teen parents, and less likely to graduate from high school or college. Yes, that's exactly what we need more of in all our communities, isn't it? Never mind the Black community. First came to the attention of this issue seriously when I read a landmark piece by Irving Kristol in 1994 titled "Life Without Father." He wrote this, quote, "One of the incontestable findings of modern social science is that fathers are very important people. I confess to having been astonished to discover just how important. Important in all sorts of unexpected ways. Thus it turns out that almost 2/3 of rapists, 3/4 of adolescent murderers, and the same percentage of long-term prison inmates are young males who grew up without fathers in the house. I doubt that many fathers have understood that their mission in life had anything to do with the prevention of rape, murder, or long-term imprisonment. But it does." You see, it's not about Black lives, or any lives, really, for the BLM organization. It's about, how did Ilhan Omar put it? Dismantling the system. How did Joe Biden put it? Transforming America. Of course, this is all part of the destruction, or should I say dismantling, devised by Marxist revolutionaries. I do not exaggerate. In the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx goes right into this, writing, quote, "On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain. In the completely developed form, this family exists only amongst the bourgeois." Close quote. Frederick Engels himself wrote a book, a whole book, on the need for dismantling the families. My point is this. Pull up your socks. Sharpen your messaging. Don your political armor, and let's get to it. On this day in history, in 1940, Germany commenced its battle against Britain. It soon became a question as to whether National Socialism would win not just the battle, but the battle for the whole world. There may not be bombs right now, but socialism is on the march here, and it has not only infected the Democratic Party, it has metastasized throughout it and become part and parcel of it. Winston Churchill gave a speech later in July in 1940, and he concluded thusly about his country, Great Britain. I ask you to think about it for America just now. He closed this speech saying, quote, "But all depends now upon the whole life strength of the British people in every part of the world, and of all our associated peoples, and of all our well-wishers in every land, doing their utmost night and day, giving all, daring all, enduring all, to the utmost, to the end. This is no war of chieftains, or of princes, of dynasties, or national ambition. It is a war of people and of causes. There are vast numbers, not only in this island, but in every land, who will render faithful service, and whose names will never be known, whose deeds will never be recorded. This is a war of the unknown warriors. But let all strive without failing in faith or in duty, and the dark curse will then be lifted from our age." Close quote. Let us understand what the task is here. Let us understand clearly what the stakes are. And let us, God, please do our utmost, as he said, night and day, giving all, daring all, enduring all, to the utmost, to the end, for what we know truly is the last best hope of earth. But remember, the man who said that we were just that also warned that the only way we lose this last best hope of earth is internally. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide, he said. By the way, he said that in a speech about the dangers of anarchy and violence in America against her institutions. Just saying. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.